So we're moving away from expressions and moving into equations. So with an equation, I'm actually going to solve through and get m by itself or get the variable by itself. So grouping symbols, we're still going to use PEMDAS. So the left side is grouped together and the right side is grouped together. So looking at the left side, there's nothing I can do inside the parentheses, but I can use the distributive property to get rid of the parentheses. So this is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply 2 times m and 2 times -4, which gives me -8. And then I'm going to keep writing the rest of the equation. And now I'm still going to look, the right side is as simplified as possible. So I'm going to look at the left side, and I've got some addition subtraction here that I can combine together. The 2m needs to come along for the ride because I'm combining like terms. So -8 plus 3 is -5. And now the left side is as simplified as possible, and so is the right side. So now I'm going to start isolating m. So for the first 3 steps, we did order of operations, and now I'm going to start getting m by itself. So anything that's hanging off by itself, we're going to get rid of first. So what's the opposite of subtracting 5? It is adding 5. So we're going to add 5 to both sides. So -5 plus 5 is 0. That's why we did that. So now I've got a -1 plus 5, or a 5 minus 1 is 4. And now this says 2 times m. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. Any number divided by itself is 1. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. So my solution on this example is 2. So our next example, remember that the left side is a group and the right side is a group. So looking at the left side, I see order of operations, parentheses first. There's nothing I can do in there. So I'm going to go ahead and move out, and I'm going to get rid of those parentheses by distributing the 6. So I distribute the 6 to both of those. So 6 times p is 6p. 6 times -3 is -18. And now I'm going to move over to the right side. So there's nothing to be done on the inside of the parentheses, but I can distribute the 5. So 5 times 4p is 20p, and 5 times 3 is 15. And now I'm going to look back on the left side. What can I do? So I see that I've got like terms right here. So 6p is going to come along for the ride. He doesn't have any other friends. So -18 minus 7 is a -25. Looking at the right side, I've got p's here and like terms here. So a +15 minus 12 is 3. And it's a +3. I forgot my p. Okay. And now the left side is as simplified as possible. So the right side is as simplified as possible. So now we're going to start isolating our variables. So as a general rule, I move the smallest value of my variable first. So I'm going to compare 6p's to 20p's, and 6 is smaller. So I'm going to move him using addition subtraction. So I'm going to subtract it because that's the opposite of a +6p. So 6p's minus 6p's, all the p's are gone from the left. And that leaves me with a -25 equals 14p plus 3. So now my p's are isolated on the right. So I'm going to get rid of the 3, and then I'm going to get rid of the 14. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So that gives me a -28 equals 14 p's. And now I'm going to divide both sides by 14 because I want to get p by itself. So -28 divided by 14. Any number divided by itself is 1, so p is -2. All right, our next example is fractions. If you're not comfortable with fractions, that is okay because we're fixing to get rid of them. So I see that I've got one fraction minus another fraction equals a final fraction. So I've got 3 terms working here. If I needed a common denominator, what would it be? So I look at all my denominators. I got a 3, a 2, and a 6. So my common denominator is the smallest number that all three of those will divide into evenly. So my common denominator is 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply all three chunks by 6 and get rid of these fractions. So I'm going to multiply this by 6, this by 6, and this by 6. Okay? And now notice what happens. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and that leaves me with 2x. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. And then 6 divided by 6 is 1. So that leaves me with an x plus 3 on the right. If it makes you more comfortable, you could have said 6x over 3, so just multiply it, minus 18 over 2 equals 6x plus 3 over 6. And then you've got 6x's divided by 3 is 2x's, minus 18 divided by 2 is 9, and then the 6 is reduced and leave you with the x plus 3. So now I'm going to look and see, is anything common? The left side is as simplified as possible. The right side is as simplified as possible. So I'm going to move my smaller x's using addition subtraction. So this one, which is 1x, is smaller than this one. So the opposite of a positive x is a negative x. So 2x's minus an x is x. And now x is isolated on the left. So I'm going to get rid of that 9 by adding 9 to both sides. So I've got x equals 12. And that just makes life a little bit easier if we don't have to deal with fractions. All right, so our final example for this one is a fraction plus a fraction equals a fraction. So I've got 3 terms here. And again, I want to get rid of the fractions. I can do that as long as I'm dealing with an equation, not an expression. So as long as this is an equal sign or an inequality, so like less than, greater than, less than, equal to, greater than or equal to, I can do this. Okay? So if it's just an expression without one of those symbols, I cannot do this. So what would my common denominator be? I've got 8, 2, and 4. So what's the smallest number that all three of those will divide into? 8. So my common denominator would be 8. So I'm going to multiply all three chunks by 8. So multiply this by 8, this by 8, and this by 8. And then we're going to go ahead and divide. So 8 times 1 is 8. So 8x divided by 8. I'll write this one out. Plus 1 times 8 is 8 over 2 equals 1 times 8 is 8 over 4. And now it divides out really pretty. So 8x's divided by 8 is 1x plus 8 over 4, or sorry, 8 over 2 is 4. 8 over 4 is 2. So x is almost alone. There's not another one to move over. So I'm just going to get rid of this 4. So what's the opposite of adding 4? It's subtracting 4. And I get x equals -2.